shop rats. On today's program, we're going to just briefly, discuss volumetric efficiency of an engine and what all goes into that. Let's just watch the show intro. I'll see you in about 30 seconds. I'm Mike, and this is my car shop.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is My Car's Shop.
To continue on with our series now on carburation and carburetor sizing, I thought it would be good to just spend a little bit of time talking about volumetric efficiency. Now, I'm not intending this to be like a deep engineering discussion and physics and all of that stuff. I just kind of want to hit the highlights, and quite frankly, I'm not smart enough to be able to have a discussion at that level. But in the calculation on how we size a carburetor, the volumetric efficiency number is kind of it's a guess, really. It's a lot of scientific equipment and so forth to actually do the measurements to determine, and a bunch of calculations, to determine the actual volumetric efficiency of an engine. And quite frankly, none of us have a dyno and all the equipment that would be necessary to be able to calculate that number accurately. But there's enough information known from multiple dyno tests over the last, 50 plus years, let's say. A lot of information available about engine dynamics and so forth, that we can kind of have at least a junior high school level discussion based upon that information, and we can get a pretty good idea of how to make a good guess at the volumetric efficiency of our engine. Now, it was interesting to me. I was recently on Summit's website because I'd like to do a lot of research on things just because it gives my mind something to think about other than stupid things like work. And they give a pretty good explanation of volumetric efficiency. And I don't necessarily agree with their numbers, but I'm going to use their numbers and just talk about that briefly. And if you just search on the Google thing, if you just search Summit Racing volumetric efficiency explanation or something like that, you can find that page, and it is interesting. Now, they say that a stock engine runs about 80% volumetric efficiency, and a mild performance engine, like a street performance engine, runs around 100% volumetric efficiency, and then a really modified high performance engine would gain about 115, I think was the number they use, percent volumetric efficiency or more. I think that may be a little bit aggressive, but I kind of get where they're coming from. And I don't want to get into all of that because, it's just theory and so forth. But what I do want to do is use their numbers, because I did some calculations and some thinking about this, and I was actually going through some numbers on a 350 engine, because 350 is a good number to use. I know I'm a Mopar guy, but sorry. Mopar did do a 350 big block in 1957, so 350 could be a Mopar engine, and that was a heated discussion on a discussion forum a while ago. But anyway, neither here nor there. 1 year only, by the way, guys. So, sorry about the segue there. So let's use 350 at 5,000 RPM, and using the volumetric efficiency number of about 80%, then we're looking at a carburetor size of about, give or take, 425 cubic feet per minute at 5,000 RPM. I already said that. And so that's a good baseline, and that for a street car stock engine, that's plenty of carburetor. Now, we could go down another rabbit trail here at some point of, well, if that's true, then why did the factory put a 750 quadrajet on a 350, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a different world, the way those carburetors work, and they don't use 100% of what they flow. They're tuned, and those secondaries will only open so far, and the engine's gonna take what it wants with a carburetor of that design, or even a vacuum secondary Holley carburetor is the same thing. Just because it's that big doesn't mean it uses all of it. a vacuum secondary carburetor or a quadrajet or a thermal quad. They just give the engine what it asks for and no more. So remember that, and we can talk more about that at a later time. But let's get back to our VE number. So if you use the 100% volumetric efficiency number, let's try not to get in an accident here. If you use that 100% volumetric efficiency number, then we go from a 425 CFM carburetor to about 525, give or take, CFM carburetor, because the volumetric efficiency gets better. It's nothing more than an air pump. That's all it is. It's like a big compressor in many ways that sucks in air and blows out air, and of course we squirt fuel into that thing to make it go boom, and it becomes self-propelling, if you will. And then we tap off that power via the crankshaft and through the transmission to the rear end. So it's kind of a cool thing. But an air pump can only pump with the air pumps. Now there are a lot of variables with camshaft and headers and intake and a lot of things that timing and so forth on how efficient that engine is. But basically it's a mechanical pump, and that pump is only capable of pumping, sucking so much air. And that's where that volumetric efficiency comes from. How efficient is this unit at pumping air? Now, you would think that the factory would want to get their volumetric efficiency number at 100% so that engine was of optimum efficiency. Well, remember that we're talking about maximum airflow, which is at wide open throttle, maximum RPM. Well, not even wide open throttle, because we're not putting the carburetor in there. But what is that engine capable of flowing at a specific RPM? 100% does not necessarily mean that it's going to be drivable in all conditions. So the factory was always looking for optimum performance, drivability, and in more recent years, fuel mileage, although that wasn't as big a thing in the past. And if we look at factory high performance engines, their volumetric efficiency numbers would be higher than the typical 80% on a modern engine. But you have to remember that, when grandma's driving this to the grocery store, she wants something that's going to be very drivable, very functional, perform well, not something that's going to be finicky and necessarily generating its maximum amount of horsepower. And the second thing in all of that is durability. The engine needs to be able to last. And so a stock engine isn't like a high performance engine that literally is tearing itself apart trying to generate horsepower. So those are some of the factors that go into why the factory would not generate an engine of 100% volumetric efficiency. You have emissions, things that come into that. There's just a lot of stuff. I think if I'm going to use a number to calculate carburetor sizing as far as volumetric efficiency for a street performance engine, I'm probably not going to use 100% because I think that's a little aggressive. But I get why Summit Racing does that, and it is a school of thought out there. I mean, Summit Racing didn't make this stuff up, obviously, and they are a trusted source. I would probably use a number that's a little bit lower than that, and I probably wouldn't go over 100% for anything that wasn't forced induction. I'm not sure the rationale behind saying that a racing engine is more than 100% efficient without forcing air in, which throws everything out the window. But again, it's all scientific theory and engineering theory. So if I was going to use a number for a street performance engine, I probably would pick somewhere between 90 to 95%, depending on how radical that motor is, what the compression ratio is, stuff like that. So again, volumetric efficiency is, without spending a lot of money and a lot of science, you have to kind of go based upon known standards or known baseline numbers from engines that are similar to yours. And I admit it is a little bit of voodoo and black magic trying to get that. But those are my thoughts on volumetric efficiency and what the numbers that I would use. higher the RPM, the more it's going to flow, the more efficient that engine is, the higher that number is going to go. I would cross over the 100% with forced induction or chemical supercharging, i.e. nitrous. But overall, those are my thoughts on those numbers. Remember that if you're building a street car, even if it's a hot rod like the one I'm driving right now, you still need something that's going to be drivable and not always run it wide open throttle. And when it comes to carburetor sizing, even though that's not really what this is about, when it comes to carburetor sizing, you're always better to be a little undersized for street use than oversized. You can get away with a whole lot more on a drag strip than you can when you're trying to drive a car like this, like I am right now, to work on a Saturday morning. It's rather ironic because I was a terrible student with math in high school particularly, and I completely avoided anything to do with math in college as a result. But one thing I did fall in love with when I was in tech school was doing some of this automotive math. And of course later when I became an engineer and math made sense to me because of the practical application of what we were trying to determine, I used to spend a lot of my spare time developing spreadsheets and putting together formulas on stuff all like this. And I still like thinking about it and saying, well, what if I change this scenario and do the math and see what that is? What if I change the gear ratio? What if I change the effective ratio by changing the tire size, like the video that just Mopar Joe did just recently? There's so many fun things to think about where how you can changes you could make and see how it affects the performance. And carburetor sizing is definitely one. Calculating out the airflow of an engine and determining how many CFM of a carburetor should I put on my car, to me that's kind of fun. But then again, I'm probably kind of a fuel system nerd. Are there other things on carburation and fuel system, fuel pumps, which is really an area of at least former expertise, fuel pump sizing, fuel line theory, fuel line size, anything that you would like me to give you my 2 cents on? Remember, it's just my opinion. It's my perspective based upon both professional and my own personal experiences working with hot rods and cars and drag cars and all the stuff I've worked on since I was a kid. Drop it down there in the comments. What else would you like for me to discuss on these Talk About It Tuesdays? All right, that's going to do it for this episode. Give me your thoughts on volumetric efficiency as well. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. Hit that like button. Smash that subscribe so that we can continue to grow the channel and get the word out, because more people could possibly use to hear this and at least have somebody to laugh at. We're on the face thing. Instant Grandma, oh, she loves us. / My Car Shop. And one more thing, don't forget, it's important. Rock!